Non-stop local news for Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. This is News Channel 8.
I am Jeff Goldberg. We start this morning with breaking news. The death of D.C. council member and self-proclaimed mayor for life Marion Barry overnight at the age of 78 years old. His family saying in a statement that Barry died shortly after midnight at the United Medical Center in Southeast Washington. This came after having been released from Howard University Hospital yesterday, was said to be doing okay. Our D.C. Bureau Chief Sam Ford is live this morning in Southeast Washington at the United Medical Center. Sam, so many people across this city, across this region, across this country. When you mentioned District of Columbia city government, Marion Barry, for so many people, was the first name that came to mind.
Indeed, Jeff. Marion Barry is a towering figure, was a towering figure here in Washington, probably the most important political figure in this city. Interestingly, last night, Barry's press secretary put out a statement, I guess around 8:30, saying that at 6:30 he had been released from a 3-day stay at Howard University Hospital. We understand that driver brought him home. At some point he went out to get something to eat, and then the driver brought him back. As he was getting out of his car, he collapsed outside his house. The driver called an ambulance. The ambulance came here to United Medical Center. They brought him here.
Councilmember Barry was brought here to United Medical Center via ambulance at 12:15 a.m. He was pronounced dead at 1:46 a.m. Certainly it's a sad day in the District of Columbia. Our doctors were very instrumental in making sure he had the proper care in his last moments here. And so we're just pretty saddened about his death today.
And of course, Natalie Williams there, the spokesman for the hospital, used to be Marion Barry's press secretary. Marion Barry was a towering political figure here in this local Washington. He moved here in the 60s with the civil rights movement, and he stayed. And we're going to take a look back at his life.
This city is better off now because of my leadership.
The city paper once called him D.C.'s mayor for life, and in many ways it was true. Even when he did not hold the actual office, he dominated the city's attention as no other figure. Marion Barry moved to D.C. from his hometown of Memphis in the 1960s. He had been a civil rights activist, a member of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, college kids who sat in at lunch counters to protest policies that refused to serve blacks, and occasionally they were attacked by angry whites and arrested. Barry called it public service.
I spent over 30 years of my life since 1960 giving it to the public. In the civil rights movement, arrested some 2 or 3 dozen times.
After the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968 and the massive riots in Washington, Barry emerged here as a high-profile community activist running a black self-help group called Pride Incorporated. From there, he was elected to a less than satisfying school board post.
They're reactionary, and you have to just try to figure out how you get some power in this town.
Barry was next elected to city council, and an incident in 1977 rocketed him to prominence. A radical group called the Hanafi Muslims took over the district building, D.C. City Hall, and in the chaos they shot then at-large council member Marion Barry and news reporter Maurice Williams, who was killed. The city negotiated an end to the takeovers, and Barry survived.
Well, I wish it hadn't rained on our parade, but on the other hand, that's good luck.
The following year, Barry was elected mayor of Washington, D.C. He pulled an upset and would remain mayor for 16 of the next 20 years. The early Barry years were marked as a time of progress for D.C. black business that saw its share of city contracts soar from single digits to more than a third. He guaranteed all D.C. youths who wanted them summer jobs. But by Barry's third term, his administration suffered from daily news stories about his rumored drug use with a woman named Karen Johnson and with a drug dealer named Charles Lewis. Barry denied it all.
The mayor's word in a situation ought to at least be a little bit higher than that of a convicted drug dealer or a prostitute.
Then in January 1990, in a video seen round the world, Barry smoked crack cocaine in an FBI sting where they used an old girlfriend, Rashida Moore, and arrested the mayor on drug charges. The next day, a wild scene in front of U.S. District Court as the mayor of the nation's capital, his wife Effie at his side, arrived for arraignment on misdemeanor charges of possession of crack cocaine. He was ultimately convicted of one misdemeanor and sentenced to 6 months in prison. He turned over the reins of government to newly elected Mayor Sharon Pratt Kelly and was off to serve his prison sentence. 5 months after he got out of prison, he was back on the campaign trail, defeating Wilhelmina Rolark as Ward 8 council member.
You can come back. It's not that you get knocked down, that you fall down, or get kicked down, that you get up. That's your part.
2 years after that, he was campaigning for his old job as D.C. mayor, and yes, he was elected once again. Striking was how he was loved in much of the black community.
I love Marion Barry. He did a lot for us black people, and I will always vote for him.
Also striking how he was loathed among whites, where his approval rating was 5%.
I've hated him since the 80s, so that opinion has not changed.
Back in office, Barry's response to whites being upset by his re-election.
Well, get over whatever personal hang-ups you got. Get over it.
But it was Barry who got the worst of it the second time around. Kelly handed Barry back a city that was flat broke. Congress appointed a control board to run D.C., with Barry as mere figurehead. The man Barry appointed as his chief financial officer, Anthony Williams, publicly turned on Barry.
I'm hard-pressed, quite frankly, to see how this job can be done without the support of the administration.
The control board backed Williams, and Williams eventually got himself elected mayor, and at that moment, the control board gave back control of the city to the mayor's office. The control board chairman, Andrew Brimmer.
We will have a new mayor.
Out of office once again, Barry would make a try for an at-large council seat of Phil Mendelson. Then in a traffic stop, park police said he had cocaine around his nose. Barry dropped out. Then back to Ward 8, where he defeated the incumbent Sandy Allen and returned to the council. A bumpy ride. After a guilty plea on tax evasion charges, a drug test revealed cocaine turned up in his system at age 70, and he was back under the authority of the court. His domestic life was bumpy as well. A divorce from his wife Effie, he married Cora Mastersberry for his second stint as mayor, then later they separated. He was again making appearances with Effie, and at the death of Effie in September of 2007 of leukemia, he was there as part of the family, listening to son Christopher describe his mother.
They say she was like a Jackie Kennedy, but that's not, no, I don't think that describes her. A woman like that only comes every few thousand years. She was like a Nefertiti or Cleopatra.
Barry and son walked down from the pulpit at the National Cathedral arm in arm. He was loved by many, hated by many, but he will be remembered by all. I'm Sam Ford, ABC 7 News. And of course, that was Barry and his son Christopher, who was his survivor, also Cora Mastersberry. Barry was planning a number of big things. In fact, this evening, tonight, on Oprah Winfrey's network, she had done an interview with Barry, and they were planning a watch party for that. And then on Tuesday, Barry has his annual turkey giveaway at Union Temple Baptist Church, 3,000 turkeys. The people line up for it. This is something Barry loved. And the thought here is that he wanted to get out of the hospital for these two big events, and he did get out of the hospital, and he didn't last very long. Marion Barry is dead at the age of 78, a towering figure in this city. Reporting live from United Medical Center in Southeast Washington, I'm Sam Ford, ABC 7 News.
Sam, if you'll allow me, just a couple questions, if you can. I know you covered Marion Barry for years. You know him well. And looking at your retrospective, which was just tremendous, so comprehensive, you know, a larger-than-life personality, to say the least. What are some thoughts you have of him, not just as a politician, but as a man?
Well, he was a very intelligent man. I mean, when you get down to it, obviously in later years there were, you know, a lot of issues about his character and that. But he was, he almost had a PhD, if you can believe that. I mean, he was a person who studied chemistry, and he almost had a PhD in chemistry. I talked to him about his life, and you know, he started out in Memphis, Tennessee, going to Lemoyne College, and at one point went to the University of Tennessee, and then ended up at my alma mater, Jeff, the University of Kansas. Kansas. He didn't like it. He said he hated Lawrence, Kansas, but nevertheless he went there as part of this thing. He was a graduate student and actually planning to be a kind of an egghead, one of the professors, the types of people who work in these labs, and that was sort of his goal. But in the civil rights movement, it sort of changed. It's interesting. There was a cop here in D.C., and I'm trying to remember his name at this point, but the point is this. He was a student in Hutchinson, Kansas, and a group of students in Kansas were going to go down for the sit-ins. And he said that Marion Barry was on the bus from Lawrence, where the University of Kansas is. He said before they left the state of Kansas, Marion Barry knew everybody's name on that bus. And, of course, then they got down to the South where they did their sit-ins. But this was a man who, whose life changed because of the civil rights movement, and, obviously he comes here to Washington, becomes an activist here in the city, and is elected to, to the positions of power in this city, the mayor for 4 terms.
One more question for you, Sam, and I know you guys had that Kansas connection in reading his obituary early this morning. You described that situation on the bus and his ability to really connect with people in an unbelievable way. Your retrospective also looked at, obviously, a controversial figure. There was a lot of detractors out there, a lot of it along racial lines. His legacy, obviously, he is, as I said before, to so many people associated with the District of Columbia government, but also many problems with law enforcement and otherwise. Legacy, where does his name now stand in terms of what legacy he will leave?
Well, he obviously, if you're talking about his legal issues, quite frankly, they never seemed to stop. I mean, it was sort of one after the other. You saw some of those in the piece. Some of them we didn't put in the piece. I don't know. I think he clearly had a drug issue, and I think this drug issue was the cause of a lot of these legal problems. When I came to Washington, I guess 30 years ago, Marion Barry was not seen as any kind of drug figure. I mean, he was the mayor. He was a serious person. But after this incident at the Vista Hotel, it seemed to go downhill from there. In fact, it probably started a little earlier than that, and then after that. But in this Ward 8, where what he represented, you could go up to people and say, do you think that Marion Barry has a drug problem? They would say yes. Are you going to vote for him again? And they would say yes. They didn't care. It was not important. Wow. And so he was the man for this area. For many people in this city, they're going to be extremely sad today because Marion Barry represented them. And if you look particularly at the black community, this was predated me, but a number of people said before Marion Barry there was no significant black middle class in much of D.C. He brought a lot of black people in government who had been excluded from the federal government and, sort of got in positions of power. And I think that is the source of his popularity. Okay.
Sam, thank you so much. We're going to hear from you throughout the morning here on News Channel 8. We really appreciate your reporting and your perspective. We'll get back to you here in just a little bit. Thanks, Sam. We want to continue, of course, our team coverage of this huge developing story now with Kristen Holmes. Now, Kristen's live in the newsroom. She recently interviewed Marion Barry about his autobiography and his legacy. Kristen, I know that the mayor was obviously making the media rounds about that autobiography. He seemed extremely proud about this book, seemed very happy with the story he wanted to tell. What was your impression of his spirits overall?
He was in great spirits. He told me that he didn't feel any vengeance for anything that happened. He had said in previous months and in previous times that he blamed people for the setup because of the drug situation, which we had just mentioned. But he said he no longer held any grudges. And Marion Barry was one of the most charismatic and savvy politicians of his time. And while he did struggle personally, his contributions to the city as mayor and before that, president of the city's Board of Education and a member of DC's council for 15 years remain some of the greatest in modern history. His book, titled after a nickname given to him, Mayor for Life, chronicled these achievements. And when I was able to sit down with Barry, he told me that this book was a chance to set the story straight and that he hoped it would serve as an inspiration to others as well as a lesson in community service.
It's also one of giving back to the community, demonstrating you got to give back. And I've done a credible job in Washington, D.C. When I came here in '65, it was a sleepy southern town. Because of my policies on working with developers, etc., look at downtown now. Look at our neighborhoods. Look at 14th Street, which is burnt out when I came into office. And I could name, look at Georgetown, look at Washington Harbor, look at the Verizon Center, airports in that building. Our new convention center, $800 million center. It was my idea, and etc. I could name countless things about our seniors, about our young people. Over 100,000 young people went through my summer job program. They remember it. When I was growing up, I had to carry both papers in the morning, an evening paper, sell rags, sell pop bottles, any way to make an honest dollar. And I swore then, if I ever got the opportunity to help young people, I was going to do it.
And he did. That summer jobs program the former mayor mentioned, and also Sam mentioned it earlier, provided a job or paid internship to thousands of the city's youth. The former mayor also told me, as I mentioned before, he holds no grudges for the past. And I think it should be mentioned, Sam said this already, but just to reiterate, Thanksgiving's just around the corner. And on Tuesday, 3,000 turkeys are going to be given to families in need. And this is all part of Barry's annual Ward 8 turkey giveaway. Jeff?
That is certainly going to be an emotional day on Tuesday. Kristen, thank you so much. We appreciate that report. Now, be sure to keep it right here on News Channel 8 all day. We're going to have much more on Marion Barry's passing and his life and legacy in the District of Columbia. You can also find more online at our website, news8.net. We're going to have much more on the passing of Marion Barry coming up right after this break. Stay with us.
You're watching News Channel 8.
And welcome back. This morning we are covering the passing of Marion Barry at 78 years old. And this morning we're, of course, hearing from plenty of D.C. officials about the passing of the former mayor. Outgoing D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray releasing a statement saying, quote, "Marion was not just a colleague, but also was a friend with whom I shared many fond moments about governing the city. He loved the District of Columbia, and so many Washingtonians loved him." We are also hearing from Mayor-elect Muriel Bowser releasing a statement about Marion Barry's passing. Bowser saying, quote, Mayor Marion Barry gave a voice to those who need it most and lived his life in service to others. I, along with all Washingtonians, am shocked and deeply saddened by his passing. Just to report the news that we started with this morning, that Marion Barry dead at the age of 78 years old. He was released yesterday from Howard University Hospital after a several-day stint there. Was said to be doing okay, and then very early this morning collapsed and was admitted to United Medical Center in Southeast Washington, where he was pronounced dead at 1:45 this morning. We're going to take a quick break from the coverage of the passing of Marion Barry. We're going to take a look at the forecast. Dave Zarin joins us now. Dave, we had a beautiful day yesterday. What are things looking like for this Sunday?
Well, actually, Jeff, you wouldn't call it balmy out there this morning, but we've stopped the shiver at least for a little while. For the past 10 days, it's been below average, but for this morning, you can see those temperatures. They're not in the teens or the 20s. Out here in western Maryland, typically one of the very cold areas, it is 46 degrees out there. Let's have a look at the headlines for today. Today's temperatures, we're going to be aiming for the mid-50s out there, so much milder than we have been used to, but some late-day rain coming in and rain overnight, some of which could be heavy. And then for tomorrow, temperatures almost 70 degrees, the highest temperature we've had this month of November, 71 back on the 11th. We could eclipse that tomorrow, but don't get too comfortable because Tuesday we'll be back into the 50s, and then by Wednesday, the big travel day, a wintry mix is possible. It looks like right now cold rain for the Washington area. Heading to the west, if you're heading out to places like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, that could be where you could encounter some of that snow. Temperatures this morning in the 30s and the low 40s out there. That's anywhere from 12 to about 25 degrees milder than yesterday, so you're not going to need that really heavy jacket out there. And the clouds are going to be thickening throughout the day here. That shower activity up over the Great Lakes, that's going to get here after sunset and into the overnight hours. So for today, partly cloudy, 55 to 58, so we'll call that a bit milder out there. And then for tomorrow, look for those temperatures, 66 to 73. You'll be able to open those windows tomorrow, Jeff, but don't leave them open too long because things will be changing. We'll be back down into the 55 range, and then we'll get much cooler than that. We'll be back with more news here on News Channel 8 in just a moment. Don't go away.
And welcome back. We want to continue our breaking news coverage this morning of the passing of Marion Barry. We are joined now by Jumi Olabanji, the co-host of Good Morning Washington. Jumi, I know you saw Marion Barry last week at an event. What were your thoughts, impressions of how he was doing?
Yes, Jeff, good morning. I attended the National Kidney Foundation annual kidney ball just last Saturday evening in D.C., and Marion Barry, who, it's well known that he is a kidney donation recipient and has struggled with kidney issues for the past several years due to his diabetes, and so he was an invited guest of the Kidney Foundation, and saw him early in the evening in a wheelchair. Wasn't, looking at his greatest health, but he was there. He was out of the house. He had some other folks with him, and people obviously recognized him and were stopping to say hello, and witnessed him chatting with attendees of the ball, even taking pictures with a few people. But you could tell that he didn't look at his best. That was definitely apparent. He looked kind of weak, kind of frail to me. But, never would have thought that this would have happened a week later based on the fact that he was out last weekend, had the black text on, and was in his wheelchair, saying hello to people and kind of greeting all the other people there to support the Kidney Foundation.
A very quick question. We have about 15, 20 seconds here. Did he seem like in good spirits? I mean, despite the fact that you said he wasn't in great health, he seemed like the consummate politician? Was he behaving that way when you saw him?
Oh, absolutely. Speaking to people, talking about his support for kidney disease research and other things that he supports and the other issues and endeavors that the Kidney Foundation takes on. And like I said, taking pictures with people, shaking hands, but it wasn't as if he was getting up out of the chair and standing and talking to people. So you could tell that his health wasn't at his best because it looked like he just didn't have a whole lot of energy.
Jumi Olabanji, thank you so much for your time, Jumi. We appreciate it. We're going to take a quick look at the 7-day forecast from Dave Zarin. Dave, what do you got? Almost spring-like by the time we get to tomorrow. Temperatures today, mid-50s. Some rain may be heavy tonight. Tomorrow in the low 70s, and then we're back down to the 50s on Tuesday. Wednesday, people begin their turkey trot. Look for a wintry mix, especially west of the D.C. area, Jeff. Dave, we appreciate it. Thanks very much. And of course, be sure to keep it right here on News Channel 8 all day. We will have much more on Marion Barry's passing and his life and legacy in D.C. You can also find more online at our website, news8.net. Have a good rest of the morning. And again, stay with News Channel 8 on this developing story.